Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to It's Amira, where I talk news, celebrity, gossip, hot topics, and all things trending YouTube. So today we are going to be talking about Meg the Stallion and Tory Lanez. I'm sure everybody's already caught up on the trial, has someone has seen all the commentary that has been floating around the YouTube streets, but I wanted to come in and give my perspective, and maybe this perspective will be a little different than what you've currently been seeing on YouTube. So, my perspective is more so going to be what would I do if I was the prosecution versus what would I do if I was the defense, and what I think makes sense in terms of building what would be considered reasonable doubt. I'll save my opinion to the end on what I think went down. But first, I want to lay the foundation, right? Like if I was in court and I was representing Meg the Stallion, I'll take the affirmative and I'll represent Meg the Stallion, and then I'll take the negative or the defense. And what would I do if I was representing Tory Lane? So here is what we know so far about this whole Meg the Stallion situation. We know that Meg the Stallion initially told police officers that she injured her foot by stepping on glass. We know that they were coming from a party after a night of drinking. We know that there may have been some potential quarrel inside the car. Now, we don't know if it was a lover's quarrel or if it was a friendship quarrel, but we know that there was some type of quarrel that happened. We also know that Meg admitted on national television that she had never had a intimate relationship with Tory Lanez. We also know that Meg the Stallion and Kelsey are friends and have been friends for a very long time. We also know that it has been widely speculated that both Meg the Stallion and her friend Kelsey have engaged in explicit activities with other celebrity artists. Now, that is allegedly because I've never seen it happen. So I'm going to say that's allegedly. We also know that Meg the Stallion, at the time of this incident, was a rising star with a huge career ahead of her. Had dropped a number of hit songs, was definitely on the roadmap to become that it girl as far as the rap game was concerned. We also know. All right, so let's talk about what we know about Tory Lanez. We know that Tory Lanez has a duplicitous past. Um, this is not his first time in the rodeo. We know that Tory Lanez it does have a firearm, or someone had a firearm in that car. It is alleged to have belonged to Tory Lanez. We know that Tory called Kelsey and apologized profusely about a particular matter. We don't know what, because he never said I'm sorry for shooting Meg in his apology, but we do know he apologized. We know that allegedly $1 million was offered to both Meg the Stallion and Tory Lanez in order to keep quiet about what transpired in the incident. We also know that Meg the Stallion and Tory Lanez have never really been seen together hanging out since this incident occurred. So those are kind of the baseline facts. And we know that they were at Kylie Jenner's house, of course, but those are like the baseline facts that we have. Now, if I'm the prosecution, here is the defense, the foundation of the case that I would lay. Number one, we have a defendant, Tory Lanez, who has a duplicitous past, who has been convicted of a crime before, right? So we talk about character first. His character, potentially, they're going to pay him out to be a career criminal. Absolutely. Does he have the access to resources to offer up a potential $1 million? Well, the answer to that question may be yes. They're going to point to his financial ability, right? He's an up and coming, well, not up and coming, he's an established artist. He had the means to potentially offer this $1 million payment to Meg the Stallion and Kelsey. He was on probation at the time that this incident occurred. That automatically goes to character, right? He's on probation. That gives motive to offer the bribe, right? And then we're going to say, what was there truly, in fact, an intimate relationship between Tory Lanez and Kelsey? We're going to have to wait for Kelsey to testify to those facts. But if I was the prosecution, I'm going to say he was protecting not only his felonious behavior and his return to prison, if he was to get convicted of this crime, but he was also protecting his image as a player who was essentially pitting these two women against each other, while allegedly, because it's alleged, that he was in the pool with Kylie Jenner. And that is why Meg Thee Stallion allegedly got upset and wanted to leave, because she was like, you supposed to be my guy and you all in this girl face. That is what we know about Tory Lanez's character. The next we think they would go to is opportunity. Did he have the opportunity to commit this crime? And the answer to that would essentially be yes. We do know, in fact, that Meg Thee Stallion went to the hospital. Was fragments were removed from her foot. It was documented in the medical report that it appeared to be bullet fragments. They said that the gun was in a lock position that would indicate that all rounds in the firearm had been let loose. We know that Meg Thee Stallion was bleeding, right? She was in fact bleeding. We know that she sought medical attention. And there is a documented report to substantiate the fact that a firearm was used. We also have eyewitness testimony, albeit not credible, but we do have eyewitness testimony of a third party saying that they saw a quarrel between friends, lovers. I mean, they saw something go down. So, based on circumstantial evidence, it can be concluded that there was an incident, a firearm was discharged, and Meg Thee Stallion was the recipient of those bullet shots, right? Now we get to story, right? You have to tell a story that makes sense. If I'm the prosecution trying to lay this case, you have to tell a story that makes sense. So you have to give motive. You have to give motive to why this man would tell Meg Thee Stallion to, and I quote, dance B. Now, it has been said that the reason for the argument started about a lover's quarrel, but quickly escalated to career insults back and forth between Meg and Tory. Meg Thee Stallion, as we know, is known for having Meg knees. That is her staple in the industry. She is a dancer. She has Meg knees, and she has positioned herself as somebody who is the go-to it girl for dancing. So is it hard to believe that this man who was potentially jealous of this woman said, and I quote, dance B? That's not a far-fetched theory for me to conclude as if I'm in the jury box or if I'm the prosecutor, because that is what she's known for. That is essentially her brand. So, did he say it? Right? Now we have to prove jealousy. Well, jealousy, because if you're going to go with the motive that Tory Lanez was jealous of Meg Thee Stallion, right? Because if I'm the prosecution, you can't just say, oh, he said dance B over one little small argument they had in the car. We're talking about discharging a firearm. We're talking about a serious assault. That's not something you would do unless this anger had been sort of brewing for quite some time, meaning there have been little spats, little brief arguments back and forth between the two that they never really escalated, but there was some tension there, right? You have to prove that there had been tension. In order for the prosecution to make that make sense, it has to be tension. So now we're going to go to Meg Thee Stallion's text messages. We're going to go to all the communication she had with Tory Lanez up to this event, up to this party. And if I'm the prosecution, I'm looking for instances where he is the call where he's communicating potential jealousy. I'm looking for instances where he's dissing her. I'm looking for instances where he's trying to pit her against other women, whether it's other celebrities in the industry, females, Nicki Minaj, Cardi B, the Young Miami, JT. I'm looking for instances of him bringing up other females in comparison to Meg Thee Stallion. I'm also looking for instances of his jealousy that he may have between Meg and other men. I am literally riddling through a litany of text messages and phone records to see if either he wasn't obsessed with Meg Thee Stallion through his consistency of reaching out to her, or there was issues with some of these texts he sent her, because you cannot say that someone pulled out a firearm on someone over a heat of the moment argument and used the words dance B. How drunk was he, right? So now we go to the night in question, because if I'm the prosecution, I have to prove that he was not in his frame of mind and that when Tory is out of his frame of mind, he resorts to violence. So now we're going to go to past behavior, right? Past behavior. This man have a history of violence? And in that prior case, was that history of violence a result of sudden onset of anger and or rage? So now we're going to look at his criminal history, and we're going to say, does he have a history of the explosive anger that could lead to him discharging a firearm? What does his record look like? What does his record look like? Where are we with his mental health? That now we go to frame of mind. Does Tory Lanez have de-escalation tactics, right? Is he a hothead, right? We go to his relationships with everyone. We bring in character witnesses. If I'm the prosecution, now I'm bringing in people who could testify to this man's character. Is he a hothead? Is he someone who can't control himself? Is he impulsive? Where is he mentally? Now, after we go to motive, character, credibility, character witnesses, now we go to whether or not it actually happened. Now, if I'm the prosecution, I'm going to bring in the medical person who examined Meg Thee Stallion's foot, who saw these bullet fragments. I'm going to, maybe you're going to, if you don't use just the medical report itself, because if you use just the medical report, I'll get to the defense. I'm gonna stay on task. But if I would bring in the person who examined Meg Thee Stallion's foot to testify to the validity of those bullet fragments and the trajectory of Good Morning Lint Liquor and the trajectory of those bullet fragments, and whether or not the gun was shot directly at her foot with the intention to pierce a foot, or if the trajectory indicated he fired into the vicinity and the ricochet is what impacted her foot. Because if you're going to go for attempted murder or attempted manslaughter or criminal negligence with a firearm, which is negligence is a little easier to prove, because if you discharge a firearm in the vicinity of a human being, that's negligence with a firearm. I mean, that's pretty conclusive. But I would start to talk about projectile motion. Maybe have a physicist come in and talk about velocity and projectile motion, inertia, and what potentially happened based off of the placement of those fragments in her foot, and try to say like there was intent to either A, make her jump around like a monkey, um, and not intentionally shoot her, or B, maybe he was trying to blow her foot off so she couldn't have that Meg knees anymore and dance and hold her balance. He could have ruined her entire career. Now, if I'm the prosecution, I'm also leaning on Meg Thee Stallion. I'm gonna have my good morning. Good morning, D. I think he's being charged with like several charges. Attempted of criminal negligence with a firearm. They may even have him on some attempted murder charges. I felt like they added some new charges. Don't quote me on what his current charges say, but I know for a fact this the charge I think will actually stick, and I'll get to why I think this one will actually stick when I talk about if I was the defense, what would I put up? It's the negligence, criminal negligence of using a firearm, right? I think that charge has the potential to actually stick, but I'll get to that when I talk about the defense. I was about to talk about Meg. So Meg Thee Stallion, if I'm the prosecution, I'm putting her on the stand as a character, as what she did, right? Emotional testimony. She came on and talked about how distressed she was, how scared she was, how she wanted to protect this man, even though he had just assaulted her with a weapon. She talks about how they used to be friends. She talks about how sick this is making her, how she wished she would have just taken her life so that she wouldn't have to deal with the public humiliation that she's faced as a result of him saying that she's a liar. Um, she gave pretty solid witness testimony on that stand. It's especially for jury impact, right? Because that's what you're looking for from Meg Thee Stallion. So now I'm going to move on to the defense and what I would do if I was the defense. And I think Meg Thee Stallion may have a hard time winning this case on some of those charges. And here's why. If I'm the defense, I feel like they have a lot of ways to create reasonable doubt. A lot of ways. The first way I'm going to go in the same order. Character. So now we're going to look at the character of Meg Thee Stallion. Meg Thee Stallion got on Good Morning America and was asked the question by Gayle King, did you and Tory Lanez have an intimate relationship? And she looked into that camera after fumbling on her words and said out of her mouth, me and Tory? Nah, we never had an intimate relationship. And it is now possibly coming out in court that they did, in fact, have an intimate relationship. That destroys her credibility as a character witness. Because when you lie once in court, it is assumed that you are lying about everything. That is by far one of the worst things you can do as a witness. One of the worst things you can do in a crime is get on the stand and perjure yourself. Now, she was not under oath when she lied to Gayle King, allegedly. She was not under oath. She ain't had no hand on no Bible. She didn't swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. She absolutely was not under oath. However, her statement on Gayle King reached millions and millions of people and painted Tory Lanez out as somebody who was just this wild guy who was brazen a firearm on an innocent woman. When in fact, they're going to introduce a counter narrative, because I always tell you guys, it's all about the counter narrative. And if I go into court and I could substantiate a counter narrative that in fact Meg and Tory had an intimate relationship, and they're going to do it the same way I would do it if I was the prosecution trying to prove that Tory Lanez was jealous. I'm going to go through all those text messages, every single one, dating back 18 months. And this started 3 years ago. So I'm going to date these text messages back maybe 5 years ago, right? Because and this is something you guys should know, anybody who is a holder of public and private information for public use or public consumption has to follow what's called a records retention policy. And that records retention policy dates back for 7 years. So anything you did on T-Mobile's network, a text message, a phone call, they have to hold those records in retention for 7 years by law. So just because you're like, I deleted those text messages or that was 3 years ago, nobody ain't gonna find it. No, your bank records are held for 7 years. Your text messages are held for 7 years. That can be subpoenaed, dated back 7 years from today. So you better be careful with what you say in these text messages and who you talking to, because the feds will definitely get you if they need to get you. But that's neither here nor there. That was a sidebar. They're going to pull these text messages from 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and they're going to redline them. They're going to go through every message and find instances, whether suggestive or direct, of Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez having an intimate sexual relationship. And if they can prove, in fact, that Meg and Tory were intimate and sexual, and that she lied on national television about the nature of their relationship, she has destroyed her credibility as a witness on the stand, and that is going to be detrimental to her case. Detrimental, almost to the point that he might walk. You cannot lie on stand about something so aggressive, because now you introduce the opportunity for a new motive, and that motive is a lover's quarrel. Was this really about a lover's quarrel? Is Meg Thee Stallion on stand? Because if they can get her on the lie about her and Tory having an intimate relationship, they have nailed her on the lover's quarrel defense. Now we're going to say, does Meg Thee Stallion have an interest to protect Kelsey, who she has allegedly had intimate relationships with other industry artists? Not only is this her friend, Kelsey, but is Kelsey also her lover? Thank you, Lint Liquor. Yes, please like the live. But is Kelsey also her lover? That's the counter narrative. And the counter narrative, are we in here because Meg Thee Stallion is trying to protect and defend her lover, Kelsey, who is the actual person who discharged that firearm? Is she here trying to protect? Is she in here trying to set up a man who has a deceptive past, who has a shady past, who has a criminal past? Is he the scapegoat? Is he an easy target for a woman who is a predator of Black men? This is what I would say if I was the defense. I'm not saying this is true about Meg. I'm telling you what I would say. Are we in here defending a woman who is a predator of Black men? A woman who is sexually open. They're going to pay her out. They're going to slut shame her and everything. Who is sexually open, perhaps maybe sexually promiscuous based on whatever they could find in her text messages or whatever character witnesses they can have come in. Did her and Kelsey have a relationship? And are we in here watching her defend her real lover, who is Kelsey? And perhaps maybe the both of them had something with Tory Lanez. And did Kelsey ever say to Meg, I think I want to start something serious with Tory, and I no longer want to engage in a three-way with you and him. I want to be exclusive with this man. And did that set Meg off? Did she go into a jealous rage in that car, screaming and yelling, fighting with Kelsey? Fighting with Kelsey, and Kelsey, who was allegedly nearest to the firearm, according to this eyewitness they might let come in. I know they said, they had to write a motion to see if the witness could come in. But if they get that eyewitness in and he testifies to that, to the firearm flash being closest to the female passenger, did Kelsey, in an attempt to take out Meg, who is Kelsey jealous of Meg? She has a blossoming career. She's the friend that made it out the hood. She's the friend that made something of her life after losing both her parents, after essentially going through all this strife. Is Kelsey seething? That you got it. This is what I was saying. Is she seething? Was she jealous? Was it her opportunity to get rid of Meg? Was it her chance and she took it? And Meg lying potentially with Gayle King could be problematic. Now we're going to go to circumstances of the crime. We're going to go to time of day. So now we're going to go to mindset. If I'm the defense, I'm going to say, how many drinks did you have at the party that night? How many drinks? Now, Meg may go into the courtroom and say, I only had like 2 or 3 drinks. I wasn't that drunk. But then you're going to have allegedly Kylie Jenner, and Corey Gamble allegedly testifying. I know Corey for sure, not sure about Kylie. But you're going to have Corey Gamble, who I can't stand that man, sidebar. But we're going to have him come into the courtroom testifying on Tory's behalf to say, no, I was at the party and I saw Meg the Stallion have at least 6, 7, 8 drinks. Now we go to frame of mind. Meg, it's the middle of the night, so you have low visibility, right? You have impaired vision and or judgment because you've had 6 to 7 drinks, which I'm sure Corey Gamble is going to testify to if he makes it in the court. Somebody on that side, guarantee you. We have low visibility. We have under the influence of an alcoholic beverage. God forbid they testify that they were smoking weed or popping pills or whatever. God forbid doing coke. I'm not saying they did that, but God forbid they testify to that. That's even worse. Now you can barely see. You have under the influence of alcohol. You have fighting in the car, so your emotions and tensions are high. Who is your anger really directed at? And now you're saying that you saw this man with a gun, you heard him say dance beat, and you saw him shoot you. Did you really see him shoot you? Did you see him shoot you? How was he holding the gun? Because now that's what I'm going to ask. If the trajectory of the bullets can indicate a certain direction of a path of travel, right? Because that's what the bullets do. They indicate a path of travel based off how they hit you. How was he holding the gun? Was it pointed directly at you in an upright position? Was it turned to the side like a pow, pow, pow? You know how you hold your hand out, gangster style? Was it pointed downward? How was he holding the firearm? Hi, Tina Lachey, good morning. How was he holding the firearm? That becomes the question. You got to testify to that, Meg. You have to testify to who was outside of the car. How far was the window rolled down when he used that firearm? Was he outside of the car, inside of the car? Was the window halfway rolled down? Was it all the way up? What side of the car did he exit from? Left or right? Was your back toward him? Were you running away from the car? You indicate that you were leaving the car because you wanted to get out because the tensions in the car had escalated so high, you wanted to leave. When you got out the car, Were you facing the car as you were leaving? Were you backing out of the car with your back to the world and your face to the car so you could see him get out of the car and shoot you? Or was your back turned and you turned around when you heard dance B? Because now you got to testify to every little detail. And at every point, they're going to point out a hole. If your back was turned when you exited the car and you was walking away, how fast did you turn around? You turned around and you immediately saw him. How far were you from the car, Meg? Were you 10 feet? Were you 50 feet? Were you 20 feet? Were you 5 feet? How far did you get? How do you know that it was him? Because you heard him say dance B? Maybe he rolled the window down and said dance B, and maybe it was Kelsey with the gun in her hand. Are you 100% sure? And if you lied about one thing, well, you could be lying about everything, especially if you lied on Gayle King. Because I'm always bring it back to that, because that's the credibility. That goes to credibility. So that's number one. Now we're going to talk about the bullet fragments. Were they really bullet fragments? So now I'm going to tear through this medical report and ask, were they assumed to be bullet fragments because this woman told you they were bullets that was shot at her? Or did you, or again, what kind of bullet fragments were they? Do it match the firearm? There was gunpowder found in the car. Where was the gunpowder found at? Why was there gunpowder on Kelsey's hand if Kelsey didn't discharge the firearm? Oh, you're going to say it was ricochet. Well, how much gunpowder was ricocheted onto Tory Lanez versus Kelsey? Now you have other people in the car who could testify to what happened. Well, bring them on the stand. Tory Lanez's bodyguard is going to defend Tory Lanez for the most part. He's going to try to defend his employer, to the best he can without perjuring himself. And Corey Gamble, God, the Kardashians, I don't know what's in it for them. She may be embarrassed. I don't know what's in it for the Kardashians to be getting themselves involved. That begs the question, what's in it for them? Why do they have a sudden vested interest to protect Tory Lanez and keep him out of jail? What tension do they have with Meg Thee Stallion? Because the only reason why that ties back to Kylie Jenner, because what interest do they have to protect Tory Lanez or to involve themselves in a criminal case that has nothing to do with them? That crime happened miles and miles away from their home. Good morning, Verena. That crime happened miles and miles away from their home. What interest do they have to protect Tory Lanez? So now I'm asking myself, well, is this really about protecting Kylie Jenner? Is this really about Kylie feeling disrespected by Meg Thee Stallion in some way that we don't know about? Whether it was in that moment or a deep-seated rage that she may have. Because why is Corey getting involved? It's nothing to do with you. You weren't in the car. You didn't see the gun go off. All you can testify is the fact that Meg Thee Stallion was the aggressor when they were at Kylie's house. That's what he's gonna say. She was the aggressor. She was angry. Her and Kelsey were fighting. She was mad at Kylie. She was enraged. She was just looking for a fight. Oh, that's what he's gonna testify to. That he's gonna make her out to be the wild black woman with rage on her in her spirit and fury in her heart. That's what he's gonna say. And that and Meg is gonna have to prove that she had calmed down by the time she had gotten in the car and they started to drive. But then it's hard to prove that when there's eyewitnesses potentially saying that they witnessed a physical fight, and you already testified or admitted on Gayle King that there was an argument in the car. So did you really calm down? You really can't say you calmed down, Meg, because that argument is continuing on. Now, the one thing in Meg's favor is she tried to exit the vehicle. She tried to remove herself from the situation when it started getting too hot. But the question is, why was there a loaded firearm in the car to begin with? Now, I understand that Tory's security may carry a loaded firearm because obviously you're protecting a celebrity. So I'm going to need a little bit more information about why that firearm was not in a discreet place, like on the person of the security guard, locked away in the glove compartment, or in an otherwise hidden area. Why did Kelsey know where the firearm was if it was her who discharged it? And why did Tory know how to access the firearm if it was him who discharged it? Who handed them the firearm? Because they just left a pool party in bathing suits. He ain't had no firearm in the waistband of his swimming trunks. Meg Thee Stallion got out of the car in a bikini. Good morning, Vicky Sweets. She got out of the car in a bikini. So who gave him the firearm? Where was it at in the car? How did they get access to it? You know, what was going on with this firearm, and why was it in a position to be discharged so readily and rapidly? So now, if Kelsey, the firearm was not registered to Kelsey, right? It wasn't registered to Kelsey. So if Kelsey, who is not the registered owner of that firearm, discharged that weapon, well, now you got possession of a firearm for unlawful purposes. Because an unregistered firearm, it wasn't registered to you for unlawful purpose. So now we got to bring Kelsey into the mix. And if Kelsey is a party to this, Louie, do we have some trouble? But before I go there, let's talk about the text messages and Tory's phone call, because that is probably the most damaging thing. That if I need prosecution, I'm gonna say, listen to this phone call, right? I'm gonna play it twice, and I'm gonna use that as impact. Oh, I'm so sorry. I want to apologize. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what happened. He's calling Kelsey and he's apologizing so heavily for what happened. And then you have a text message from Kelsey to Tory's security or somebody on Tory's team saying, hurry up, Tory shot Meg 911. Here's what I'm going to say if I'm the defense. Here's what I'm going to say. Here's where I'm going to interject my opinion. If I'm doing a counter narrative, I'm going to say that it was in fact Kelsey who shot Meg Thee Stallion. However, Kelsey had no prior criminal record, probably was in the heat of the moment, and Tory, being the hood dude he want to portray himself to be, probably said to Kelsey, a woman who he was in love with, because I guarantee Tory's probably going to get on that stand and say, yeah, me and Kelsey was getting real close. I was falling in love with her. She was a woman I wanted to protect. I loved her so much. He's going to get on there and wow for respect, for sure. And that narrative, I would paint as the defense, is Tory, who was the man in the situation, was trying to protect the woman that he loved. And so he was embarrassed and humiliated that he had an intimate moment with Meg Thee Stallion and potentially ruined her friendship with Meg. And he was calling that night to apologize profusely for coming in between two friends and for ruining the heart of the woman he loved. And that is the defense I would put up. He was this is the sound of a man who feels he's about to lose the love of his life, the woman he's poured his heart and soul into. He is apologizing for breaking her heart, not shooting a weapon. And that Tory and Kelsey got together and he said, Kelsey, just tell him it was me. Just tell him it was me. That's the defense I would put up. He was apologizing to her friend. Yeah. And if I'm the defense, that's the defense I'm going to use. He wasn't apologizing to Meg. He was apologizing to her friend for breaking her heart. And Kelsey, who's trying to protect herself from going to jail, is the one who sent the text, Harry Tory shot Meg, because she was angry with him. She sent that text message because she was so heartbroken and so devastated by how he had humiliated her that now she wanted to pin criminal charges on him. And because it was his firearm, or the firearm of somebody who was connected to him, it became easy for the both of them to pin this crime on Mr. Tory Lanez. Apparently, Kelsey is going to testify alongside Meg because the case between Meg and Tory is between the state and Tory. He should definitely get some kind of charge, like you said. Yes, Kelsey is going to get on the stand and testify. Obviously, she doesn't want to go to jail. So the only thing Kelsey's going to testify to is that she didn't shoot Meg. There's no way in hell I would testify on Tory's behalf, because in order that it is 100% conclusive. Here are the facts that are irrefutable. Even if we can put speculation in those bullet fragments, even if we could put speculation in time of day, even if we can put speculation in who shot the gun, there is one fact of this case that is irrefutable, and that fact is the gunpowder residue, which can only be found if a firearm was discharged. That's it. That is conclusive, concrete evidence that a firearm was used that night. So you have to tie the discharge of that firearm to someone. So Kelsey cannot get on stand and stay out of it. She was subpoenaed by the prosecution. She can't stay out of it because somebody shot a gun. So the defense has to introduce a counter narrative. Kelsey shot the gun. Now Kelsey has to save her own ass. She has to get on stand and say, I didn't shoot that gun. It was Tory who shot the gun. Do she want to go to jail? Because the case on her would be next. The moment Tory got off for this, they would be filing charges on her immediately for this crime. So she has no choice but to get on stand and lie. Or say that it was him. I mean, I don't know if it's allegedly, because I don't know if she lied or not. I wasn't there that night. But she has no choice. She would have no choice. But she's definitely going to get on stand and defend her own self because she doesn't want to go to prison. So we can expect that. The question then becomes reasonable doubt. This is all a case of reasonable doubt. And if the defense can put up a solid case of reasonable doubt over who shot that gun, Tory will walk on this. The only thing he may get charged with, because how did somebody in a car got access to that gun for the use of an unlawful purpose? If the gun was registered to him, he holds the weight for that. So that's what that's going to come down to. I think he's going to get some kind of charge. It may be some kind of gun charge in some way, form, or fashion, because someone's going to be accountable for discharging that firearm for an unlawful purpose. 100%. 100%. Someone's going down for that. And if it was his gun and it comes out being unconclusive, well, maybe it'll be him. The other charges are going to be hard to prove because I think there's strong reasonable doubt in this case. It's crazy when they didn't take the gun for evidence. Why can't they just test it? At this point, I'm sure the prints on the gun have been wiped clean. For sure. At this point, it would be useless. I don't know. The police, you're dealing with celebrities in California. You can't always expect the police department to act the way they would if it was a regular citizen's quarrel. You really can't expect that. I'm not surprised that they took Meg Thee Stallion's story for face value. I'm not surprised until, things came out further. I'm not shocked because they're celebrities. Look what happened with Kevin Hart when he was DWI on Rodeo Drive or whatever highway. He crashed that car real bad, and his trainer and her husband got injured horribly. He went home and went to bed. He was under the influence, allegedly. You know what I mean? When you're a celebrity, it don't really move how it's supposed to move for you. It don't move that way. But that's neither here nor there. So I think this will come down to a case of reasonable doubt. I do think there's a lot of reasonable doubt in this case, especially because of time of day, trajectory of the bullets, Meg Thee Stallion lying to the police initially about whether she was shot or stepped on glass. Her credibility is shot. You could say, oh, I was afraid of the George Floyd situation. I didn't want to put another black man in jail. Well, you're putting another black man in jail right now. If your interest was protecting the sanctity of a black man who shot you, are you serious? That's what you're really going to come in court and say. You are in here literally trying to defend, or allegedly try to defend, the honor of a man who attempted to murder you. Is that what you're telling the court today? And she's going to have to testify yes to that. Over what happened with George Floyd hundreds of thousands of miles away. I mean, not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of miles away. Like, that's what we're testifying to? I don't know about that. I don't care how impassioned I am in the moment. You're not going to shoot me and I'm going to tell the cops I stepped on glass. That's impossible. The only way you would say such a thing is if you don't know who shot you. And you like, damn, was it Kelsey or was it Tory? Shit, I don't want to send my girl to jail. I stepped on glass. That kind of goes to the defend your lover story that on Meg's behalf. And why lie about your relationship with him? She lied because she didn't want to admit to Kelsey, who she really loves. That's what the defense is going to say. She lied about her relationship with Tory because she didn't want to admit to Kelsey, the real love of her life, that she had been carrying on with this man behind her back for quite some time. That's why she lied on national television. Because if she tells the truth on national television, Kelsey's going to be mad at her all over again. And that might impact Kelsey's statement, Kelsey's ability to ask questions when the prosecution is having her testify. And when the defense cross-examines her, she needs to keep Kelsey on her side as long as possible. She can't lie. Yeah, that George Floyd bull, she could have kept to herself. I'm not gonna hold you, Verena. That was a wild situation for her to bring that up. That had nothing to do with what happened to you. Ain't no way in HE double hockey sticks I'm gonna let a man discharge a firearm at me. Especially if I thought it was him after we just got finished fighting in the car, you gonna shoot me and you think you about to go home tonight? Nah, dog. It's a no for me, dog. I don't care how long we've been friends. I don't care how much money you have. I don't care how much money I have. It's a no for me, dog. You're not about to shoot me. You could have killed me. You could have ruined my whole career right here in this moment. You definitely going to jail for that. And that would have been completely understandable. But you lied in the moment and said you stepped on glass. So who was you really trying to protect to the bitter end? And now that you're embarrassed, which is what the defense is going to say, I'm talking as if I'm the defense, not as my own personal opinion. Uh, but if I'm the defense, I'm going to absolutely get on stand and say, and now that you're outed as a liar, as someone who has no credibility, who lies consistently at every turn of this case, you are sitting in court trying to do to Tory Lanez exactly what was done to George Floyd. I will use her own words against her if I was a defense. You're trying to do to Tory what they did to George Floyd. Publicly execute him for the world to see, which is what you did on Gayle King and is what you're doing right here in this courtroom. That's I would absolutely use that against her. You're going to eat those words if you're lying. You're going to eat those words if you're lying, because that was a real case with real trauma, with a real family who lost someone. And how dare you come in this courtroom and try to scapegoat the world? Oh, you're going to eat that. You're going to eat that. If I was a defense, I would drive that home. She would regret it. Now, if I'm the prosecution, I'm gonna say that she's a scared woman. She has no friends. I mean, I would put out, if I'm the prosecution, I'm gonna say she has no family. She lost both her parents. She grew up basically raising herself. She, has friendships. She relies on her friends as sort of her family. She feels that they're family. She saw him as more than just a friend. She saw him as a brother. I'm gonna use what I can to say that she saw him as a brother, that she felt like she was being assaulted by her own flesh and blood, and she didn't want to do that to her family. I'm gonna go with the family defense. I mean, the family defense if I'm the prosecution. That's what I would do. Definitely interested to hear Kelsey's account of the situation. She might crack this whole thing open. I guess it depends on the questions and cross-examination via the defense. Oh yeah, they're gonna ask her a lot of questions about the nature of her and Meg Thee Stallion's relationship. Yes, please thumbs up the live. Thanks, Verena. They're gonna ask her a lot of questions about the nature of her and Meg's relationship, how long they've been friends, whether or not they've ever been intimate, whether or not they've ever been intimate with third parties. You know, they might even ask her, a lot of personal questions about her relationship, because they need to prove that they were the real lovers in the situation, and this was a lovers quarrel between them and a third party. So yeah, that's how I think it's been going so far. Um, I think Meg Thee Stallion gave a very strong impact statement in court based off of the reports we're hearing online. I think she gave a very strong impact statement saying how scared she was, how she wanted to take her own life. That's the whole Cardi B defense. Cardi said that when she went up against Tasha K. I was suicidal. I wanted to kill myself. I mean, that has huge impact. When you're a celebrity, you understand. Talk about you want to take your own life over public humiliation. It has a big impact, especially if there are women in the jury box, or even men, or even men. And Meg doesn't really have a contentious past as much as Cardi did. That's so wildly known. Cardi was a known stripper. She kind of made her whole life off of that. Meg has, probably been in the clubs and stuff like that, but that's not kind of her image, right? She more so brands herself as a woman who could take advantage of men, and that's going to be used against her too. All her music is about exploiting men, making men do what she want to do because she's the power player in a relationship. She's the one who's trying to take him for his money. I would point to that. I would say, Meg, your whole career is about exploiting men for financial gain. That's what you talk about. So is this another attempt? This $1 million, where did it come from? And then if I'm the defense, I'm going to prove that Tory doesn't even have $1 million to give. How could he offer you something he doesn't have? I would be pulling his bank records. I'll be pulling this, that, and the third. This man don't got no $1 million in liquid cash. How's he going to get? He never said that because he couldn't do it. He couldn't give you the money. And then what proof do you have? You can't say that he said that without a witness. You need someone to corroborate your story. And the corroboration has to be somebody who doesn't have a vested interest in lying. So it can't just be Kelsey, because does Kelsey have a vested interest in lying to protect her own ASS? Has to be a unique third party with no interest in the case, which would be the driver. It would be the driver, and otherwise it's hearsay, or it doesn't have the same impact. So that would be my thing there. If I was a defense, he ain't got no $1,000,000. What you talking about, Willis? He on probation. Why would he risk his freedom? He has a budding career that was about to blossom. Why would he risk his freedom to shoot Meg Thee Stallion, over a spat that really had nothing to do with him? It was about them two. Why would he risk his career? That would make that defense. And I think he'll be okay if they go that route, because there's a lot of reasonable doubt that could be introduced here. But we'll see what Kelsey says, because that could change my whole perspective on this case, depending on what Kelsey says. And so, we'll see. Meg is a liar and she messed up. Tina Lachey, you have got to be some kind of wicked to lie about somebody shooting you. You got to be some kind of wicked. And I want to have hope. I really do. I want to have hope that Meg Thee Stallion would not, as a Black woman in this country, who there's a whole narrative of how Black women are unprotected, how Black women are never believed for their story, how Black women are always exploited under the helm of white men, Black men, and everyone else. I would hope and pray to God that she would not blow a hole through the entire narrative by trying to put a Black man in prison for no reason, on the basis of a lie. I would really hope that she wouldn't do that. And I'm having a hard time believing she would. So that's why I'm kind of like, I'm going to save my judgment of her until all the facts are presented, because that is something you really can't come back from professionally. Her career will be over. There's no forgiving that. I don't care what the circumstances were. You can't willingly and knowingly try to put someone in prison over a lie. That is an unforgivable act, not only in a court of law, but in life, under God. And that's unforgivable. That's horrible. And then to not know what side of the car he was on when he shot her. Yeah, I mean, she's going to have to account for all the details. They're going to say she was drunk. It's a lot of reasonable doubt, Verena. It's a lot of reasonable doubt. A lot of reasonable doubt. And I would love to know what Meg Thee Stallion did to Kylie Jenner that has Corey Gamble willing to involve himself in this situation. Because I want to know. And why I want to know. I want to know. I believe Meg, but there are definitely holes in the story. There's gunshot residue, so we know that there was a gun, but everything else feels so up in the air and unestablished. She has a lot of reasonable doubt in the case. Pure Silk, you're absolutely right. And the defense is going to leverage that fully, and I think they'll win some points, because if I'm in the jury box, you have 3 people who were drinking heavily at a celebrity party, drunk so much so that they didn't even put clothes on before going home. Like, at the end of the day, frame of mind. Where was your mindset? Why were you in a car in a thong bikini? Like, you didn't put your cover up on? Where were your pants? Like, I mean, that kind of shows that you might have been so lit that you was like, yo, I'm too lit right now. Like, I'm going home. How you drunk, you just get in the car and be like, yo, we out. I'll put my clothes on later. I don't know. I believe the gun was registered to somebody related to Tory Lanez, Verena. I'm not sure if it was Tory's gun or if it was his security's gun, but it was definitely, the gun was on his side of this story, of this narrative. It was on his side of the narrative. But yeah, all of that will come out in court. But anywho, that's my I've been on for 48 minutes. I'm getting ready to go. I got to get myself to the point. But I will talk to you guys very shortly, and thank you so much for checking into the live. Please like and comment, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.